If, you are a business that maybe only has like one or two services, the 45% allocation to standard Google Ads might not be necessary. You might see
Mhm.
more of a 50-50 split of the Google allocation between standard ads and the LSAs.
Yeah, and the jockey between the two is really dependent on the competitive environment on each of those platforms.
Welcome to the Contractor's Edge, the show where we break down the tips, tools, and tactics you need to grow your home service business. Whether you're in a truck or at the office, we're here to give you the edge you need to win. I'm Mike Stiers.
And I'm Anthony Brown.
And today we're talking about how a $3 million home service contractor should actually build a real marketing and advertising plan to grow 30% year over year using real numbers, real KPIs, and real budget allocations. Before we get into any math, I want to frame this correctly. Growth requires commitment. You can't plan growth like you plan maintenance. If you're serious about growing, you have to commit to an advertising budget based on anticipated revenue, not last year's comfort
Mhm.
level. If you're around 3 million in revenue and you don't know your actual KPIs, you don't have a marketing problem. You have a control problem.
And that's not a shot. That's just reality. If you can't see the numbers, then you can't steer the business. So let's define the scenario. 2025 revenue, 3 million. Target growth, 30% year over year. That puts your 2026 target at 3.9 million. Now comes the part that most contractors avoid. You don't grow by spending what feels safe. You grow by committing to a percentage of where you're going, not where you've been.
Exactly. When you're positioning for growth, your planning range should be somewhere between 7 to 13% of the anticipated revenue, depending on the confidence and the momentum. So typically you kind of know where you're at and how you're rolling. And, 7% is a little conservative, 10% is typically that middle range, 13%, we're getting a bit more aggressive. So for this demo, we're actually going to dial in at 10%, just makes it easy for us to go through the simulation. So the formulas that we'll walk through kind of explain each of these. The marketing percentage is your total marketing spend divided by your total revenue. In this scenario, obviously we've got 390,000 divided by 3.9 million, and that gives you 10%. So that's the easiest way for us to look at this annual marketing and advertising budget at 390,000. Before channels, before tactics, before platforms, you need the engine's KPIs. These are the
Mhm.
gauges, and here's what we're using today. So lead to appointment set is 85%. So that would be your appointment set divided by your raw leads. The appointment set to appointments run should be 90%, and that's appointments run divided by appointments set. Your bid rate should be 80%. Again, that's conservative. We typically like to say 95% or above. It's a qualified lead. You set your appointment, you ran it, you showed up, you gave a
Mhm.
bid, you should be given a bid. That just brings that money and revenue opportunities back in. Close rate, we're going to say 32%. So that would be your actual sales divided by your appointments run. And then the average ticket for this scenario, we're going to say $10,000. So that is your total revenue divided by your total sales.
If you don't know these numbers for your business, you're guessing, period. So now we reverse engineer the revenue. So step one is sales required. How many sales do you need to make in order to hit that 3.9 million revenue goal? And you get that by just dividing by that average ticket. So 3.9 million divided by 10,000, you need 390 sales in order to hit that 30% year over year growth target. Step two, you want to figure out how many appointments you need to run. And you figure that out by dividing your 390 sales by your 32% close rate. So what that gives you is 1,219 appointments need to be ran in order to sell 390 jobs. Step three is how many bids do you need to make in order to get those 390 sales from those 1,200 appointments. You get there by dividing your appointments run by your bid rate, which for this example we said was 80%. So you divide the 1219 by 80% or 0.80, and you get 1,524 run appointments in order to reach that sales goal. The fourth step is the appointments set that you need in order to run the 1,500 appointments. So in our example, we chose 90% appointment set to appointment run rate. So you divide that 1,524 appointments run by the 90% or 0.90, and you get 1,694 appointments need to be set in order to get to those 390 sales. Your final step, step 5, is to figure out how many raw leads you need to get into the machine in order to walk backwards through that process. So in the example, we said that your raw lead to set appointment ratio was 85%. So if you do that exercise again, divide that 1694 by 0.85, you're going to need 1,794 raw leads for the year in order to get the appointments set, the appointments run, and the total bids needed to reach 390 sales for the year. And this is the part that hurts. Growth doesn't care how hard you work. It only responds to math.
Yeah, and that's why this exercise matters. I mean, obviously, we have this conversation probably on a daily basis at this point, and walking through this scenario kind of shines a light on each of those steps. It's something that has to be done. If you're monitoring KPIs and you're really serious about this growth, it removes the emotion and just replaces it with clarity. Now I kind of want to connect this into the money side. Obviously everyone always rushes to this. What's a CPL? What's a CPL? We'll get to that. So when we're looking at to calculate the cost per lead, that formula is your total marketing spend divided by your total leads. And again, in this scenario, we have the marketing budget of 390,000 divided by 1,794 leads. That means that your average cost is $217 per lead. That could be high for some folks, low for others. Now we'll actually look at those metrics. So the average dollar per sale, or ADS, would be your total revenue divided by your total sales. Again, we've got 3.9 million divided by 390 total sales. It gives you the average sale, $10,000. Now, another KPI that we like to look at, and our friend Ed Meyer mentions this in every conversation, the ADL. So that's your average dollar per lead. On that, we're going to take your total revenue and we're going to divide it by your total leads. So 3.9 million divided by 1,794. That gives you $2,175 per lead. So literally, because of this scenario, you're bringing back $2,175 per lead. We'll explain a little bit more on that scenario and why it matters. But once you know your average dollar per lead, you stop arguing about leads and you start fixing the business.
Now, from there, let's zoom out a little bit further. ROAS is another KPI that's very important. I'll define the acronym for you guys here. It is your return on your ad spend. This is something that you should track very closely, and honestly, it's one of the things that contractors or business owners typically do pay attention to. It's those higher level KPIs that it's sometimes hard to get people to wrangle. The formula for ROAS is your total revenue divided by your total marketing spend. Very similar to return on investment. So with that 3.9 million divided by the 390,000 marketing budget, that gives you a 10-to-1 ROAS ratio. So that's essentially saying you're getting a 10x whatever your investment is. And when you do this exercise and you see a 10-to-1, that's an example of a healthy, scalable ratio. There's a stoplight analogy for each and every one of these KPIs, right? We're giving you examples of what a machine could be for a particular business. 10-to-1 is good, right? Lean into it. When you're getting closer to the 654, there's a problem you should look to address.
Yep.
So now I want to talk about where the money actually goes. So there are a lot of different channels, right, in a good, healthy marketing mix. One that has become very prominent in 2025 and should be prominent in your strategy for 2026 is search engine optimization. So a good, we'll just throw out ballpark targets here again, 2,500 to 3,000 per month, let's say, that you're spending on your SEO, search engine optimization. That results in about $36,000 per year from that $390,000 marketing budget that you set. So it's a total of 9% of your total budget. It covers your website SEO, your local SEO, and your Google business profile. this is a very necessary and robust channel for generating leads and opportunities. What I always like to say to my clients is that it's the difference between like doing push-ups or like getting bicep implants. So
Ah,
you're
yeah, you've
you're
got the
not.
slow and grow versus
Yeah,
the
it's delayed
pay,
gratification.
immediate gratification.
Yeah, it's delayed gratification, which is hard to find in the modern world these days, right?
Yeah.
But the bottom line is it is a lead generator if it is done right. That's one thing I think gets lost sometimes in the minutia of SEO because it really does get into the weeds. Another really good channel that should be part of your mix, depending on like how robust your budget is. In this example, we've got 390,000. We can play the field essentially. So Meta is a support channel. It should be about 20% of the total budget that you are spending in this strategy, in this example. And it's used for things like page like campaigns, which is going to roll the snowball down the hill for you, essentially get more eyeballs on your brand, get more follows onto your page. And that makes it to where anytime you do post a message, it gets out to more people more and more every time. So another good use of this channel is remarketing. So people who come to your website or engage with you, you can remarket to them on this platform. And then the third thing that I really like is the in-stream lead generation. Now, it is not identical to other platforms where you can do lead generation, especially for home service or contractors. It is done on a pay per impression base. So at the end of the day, you can calculate a cost per lead. It's just not how that platform sells you inventory or placement. So this is not a primary demand channel. This is reinforcement. So, on the branding side, it's an opportunity to get in front of your customers, to get your message out to your community, and just get impressions, eyeballs on your brand, on your offerings, on your services. On the lead generation side of things, there's going to be a sufficient amount of leads somewhere. You got to find the line for diminishing returns for your market or for your business, but there are leads to be generated there too. It's a reinforcement of the standard low funnel lead generation efforts. I really like this channel because it does both things. It is hybrid. It's going to at the same time get your message out there, get people familiar with your brand, and it's also going to generate leads for you.
Yeah, I mean, I love Meta, as that branding tool. And obviously, for this scenario, we are putting some percentages in here just so that we can talk through it. Meta may be, you know, it might be 30%, it might be
Mhm.
10%. It really just depends. With this scenario, 3.9 million, we've got to diversify, this digital mix a little bit. And, it's kind of, exciting positioning this for growth, but I'm with you. This is certainly not a primary lead source.
Mhm. Yeah, and then it's good for you to reinforce that in this example, guys, we're just putting together numbers to show you what a mix could look like. Every business is going to be different. Every market is going to be different. You might have a lot of success on Meta and want to spend more on Meta than on other channels. You might have little success on Meta and want to spend just like a maintenance level budget on Meta. It's about what makes sense for your strategy overall. This is just a general example we put together for you. So, um, the the low funnel, like really important places to be, at least in my opinion, and I believe Mike, you share this opinion too, uh, is the high intent demand capture. So what I mean by that is on certain platforms, the customer has already done activities that show that they are in market, they're ready to purchase, they are looking for their contractor,
Mhm.
right? You can find that through the ways that they engage with these platforms. Google Ads specifically, so standard search is, and everybody knows what that looks like. It says ad or sponsored at the top. You click it, it costs you money if they click it, and ideally they go to the website, turn into a lead. You get some revenue back from that. Um, Google Ads, for this example, we're putting at about 45% of that total $390,000 budget. This is because Google Ads has that high intent audience. The idea here, if it's run correctly, most of your dollars are only going after people who are actively looking for to get a contractor out to their home. right? So that's why you want to sufficiently support that channel, because those people have already been educated and pushed down the funnel to know that they need what you're doing, and now they're shopping for it. Another high intent demand capture channel is Google local service ads. So it's another Google property. It does come up in standard search, but is a different offering when it comes up in the sequence. So sometimes Google Ads is above local service ads. Sometimes service ads uh, is above Google Ads. It mixes and matches based on how much intent is in a user's search. But the bottom line is you want to be present in both of these, and you want to be present up to the point of diminishing returns a lot of the time, because these are people who are already ready to do business, right? So you
Yeah,
add
and
those two
kind of like
together.
what you were saying too, these percentages, they can vary. I just wanted to kind of like inject real fast that sometimes we call it, LSAs, so local service ads. So sometimes we see LSAs are incredible and, the client is having incredible results, with, that service. So we would actually reallocate a little bit more of the budget. But, understanding that you kind of have these, Google essentially lion share, but split between these two services, we're going to reallocate based on where they're having the most success. I just want to kind of throw that in there that sometimes Google Ads is crushing it. But if, you are a business that maybe only has like one or two services, the 45% allocation to standard Google Ads might not be necessary. You might see
Mhm.
more of a 50-50 split of the Google allocation between standard ads and the LSAs.
Yeah, and the jockey between the two is really dependent on the competitive environment on each of those platforms.
Mhm.
So, in your market, in your particular market, you might have a bunch of private equity that's throwing around, 100,000 plus dollar budgets into either one of those services, and it's kind of raising the water level for you to get in. Um, uh, like on both sides. So it goes the other way too as well. There's going to be for some of you out there, you don't realize this yet, but you don't really have that many competitors that are utilizing these platforms or that are leveraging them to the point where it's going to drive costs up. We have a client that regularly outperforms standard lead costs for the industry by 50% or more off of LSA specifically. And it really is just because his competitors don't use it. He doesn't have as many competitors as other markets that we work in, and it became a very big driver of total leads for him because he gets a great share of voice anytime people are searching for his services because there's only him and maybe five other people, and
True.
you're just
Yeah, well,
jockeying.
reviews play into that too. I mean, we've had companies come to us and say, "Hey, we're not having any success on our local service ads. Can you kind of take a look at it?" And obviously, we always love to dive in and look at the back and see what we can discover. And I will say the first thing we look at is your Google Business Profile. If it's not optimized, you don't have images, you haven't talked about your services. If you don't have very many reviews or your ratings bad, the review quantity and
Hmm.
overall score are such a driver because the homeowner gets to choose in that whole list of companies within the LSAs who they choose to work with or who they're giving an
Hmm.
opportunity to. And I'll tell you, if you're below a 4.0, you're probably not getting a shot. If you only have a
Hmm.
handful of reviews, you're probably not getting a shot.
Yep.
But that's where standard ads could be a benefit to you because in most cases, people are doing a search, it's matching, they see what's there, they go to the website, they like what they see, and they might give you an
Hmm.
opportunity without ever even looking at your reviews or your Google Business Profile.
Right. So putting those two together, in this example, it comes out to 71% of the total budget. Like I said, we feel this is very valuable to be at the bottom of the funnel because that's where growth actually converts.
Yeah. No, that's great. So the next segment is a little bit about like what you should be looking at on a regular basis. We typically, suggest having a dashboard. I know we create those, for our clients. We look at it typically on a monthly cadence internally at the businesses. I suggest that you be looking at this on a weekly basis. I know, Anthony, you're pretty much, proclaiming that as well. But
Yep.
what you should be watching weekly are raw leads. And please Register your raw leads. These leads are the ones that come in, someone's clicked or a form fill came in. Then from there, it obviously goes into like a qualified. Then you're going to look at your appointment set percentage, your
Mhm.
appointment run percentage, your bid rate, close rate, average ticket, cost per lead, average dollar per lead, and return on ad spend. Those are the areas where you have to be hyper diligent. Literally, make yourself an Excel spreadsheet or a Google worksheet and put these in a column and then start measuring them. If you're not measuring them and you don't do, Anthony's stoplight analogy,
Mhm.
if you don't understand what the metrics are that you're supposed to be hitting, you again, like we said at the beginning of this episode, you just don't have control. So this is where you
Mhm.
get visibility, there's accountability, and you have some control. So please understand that marketing does not fix mixed calls or missed calls. More spend doesn't fix a poor close rate, and the numbers will tell you exactly what to fix. That's why we just want you to measure these and basically be accountable for that.
Yeah, and I can't tell you how many times a client will come to me and they're like, "We're having a lead problem. We need more leads. I need appointments onto this week, this, that, or the third." And I go look in the data on my end because as your marketer, I'm looking at different data than you are. The numbers that Mike just went through, these are your report card, right? My team is going to have a little bit different of a report card, and mine is going to tell me different signals as well. And sometimes we encounter dissonance between what I think is working well and what they think is working well. And I'm telling you, every time without fail, you find it by looking at those numbers and finding that something was wrong in there. Because if
Yeah.
I'm seeing that there's no reason that leads should be different and the volume of leads that I see coming through show that you should feel like you have more on on your appointment schedule, what's happening is there was overflow, somebody was missing calls, there's a call routing issue, potentially, maybe your emails aren't sending, like there's usually something that is to be found, or uh, unsurfaced, that is affecting those numbers. So it is not always, and I want everyone to try to not get into that mentality that more money is just going to fix whatever your problem is. Because if you're in that mentality, you're not actually trying to find out what your problem is. Um, so when growth is done right, your marketing percentage usually goes down. That's how you know you built a real machine. You plan aggressively, you execute with discipline, and you improve the engine. That's how scale actually works.
Really good point. I mean, I can't tell you how many times you plan for something and if you really have this in your playbook, then you can, execute on it and you see these numbers, you see the visibility, you can make educated decisions, you can identify when issues come up. I mean, it's awesome. I know that, where we preach, these same KPIs consistently, and we're not going to stop because we really want our listeners to take notice, start
Mhm.
measuring these and identify the areas of improvement within your business. The old 2% rule, if you can improve these things by 2%,
Mhm.
it's incredible what happens to your bottom line. So
Oh, I was gonna say one more thing I wanted to add is just about the forward looking when like shooting for goals. So I have had clients, we've had clients that they look at the marketing percentage in a backward looking aspect instead of a forward looking aspect. So they say, we did 3 million last year. We want to do 10% of marketing, like you asked, Anthony. You said 10%, right? And so they do 300,000 instead of 390, which was the 10% of their goal, right? When you do that, you're actually kind of stepping on your own like coattail. Like something's dragging behind you, like you've tethered yourself to last year's performance instead of becoming the machine that you have like projected or forecasted to be. And what ends up happening is you come up short of that goal, and then you just kind of keep leaving money on the table, right? As long as you're watching these metrics that we pointed out to you, it should never be scary for you to spend the 10% forward looking. Because if there is a problem, you're going to observe it because you're watching those metrics week to week. You will adjust, right? If you're coming under forecast or under projections, you don't just slam on the gas. We just told you, you can't just throw money at the problem, right? You have to diagnose and identify what's wrong here. But The silver lining is, I said a second ago, when growth is done right, your marketing percentage usually goes down. So when you aim for that 10%, you actually end up at the end of the year shooting for your growth. If you outperform, you're coming down. You're watching that go to 9, 8, 7, right? So at the end of the day, you end up spending less than the 10 anyway. So keep that in mind when you are strategizing, because I do see that happen too often. We say 10% and people go 10% of last week. And it's like, no, 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 10% of next week, next year. Your
Yeah.
10% of what your goal revenue is. So,
Yeah, that's a great point, and you really have to be focused on that too, because if you're basing it off of your previous revenue and you're setting these goals, it's just unrealistic. And one of the things that Ron taught me years ago when I was managing his marketing budget, at the Basement Doctor, it was interesting because he was very forward thinking. He understood how the engine was performing, and we would commit to extraordinarily large financial commitments on the marketing and advertising front, and there was only maybe one or two instances where we ended up going back and renegotiating a little bit lower on a traditional buy. He taught me a lesson once when I eliminated some billboards. That was fun. But hey, I'm all about the lessons and learning, and being able to apply those now. It helped me to see it's best to plan forward for what you want to achieve than have to try to play catch up, because then you have a higher burn rate. If you haven't, done everything ahead of time, you're paying more than you probably should pay.
mhm,
And making those adjustments along the way, you can, understand what the flow of, all right, I got this lead, I got the appointment scheduled, I went out and sold it. Now I got it in the ground. I'm bringing the revenue back in, and because you're monitoring everything, you can make adjustments. And
mhm,
sometimes things happen that are beyond your control, economically, weather based. Maybe something's happened internally with your staff and you need to make some course corrections. Trust me, it's a heck of a lot easier to have it planned out in advance and then make those changes and account for that than have to go and try to play some crazy catch up at the end of the day. So
yep,
well, as we wrap up, I just wanted to kind of give a little bit of a game plan to our listeners. You're going to notice that we've got a little bit different structure. We've met internally. We received some really great feedback. Thank you for everyone in our community that's kind of been giving us feedback and giving us ideas. Essentially, the programming that we're going to do in 2026 is going to have one long form per month. So that'll probably be our typical. Maybe it's like about an hour or so for that segment. And then we're also going to have 3 to possibly even 4 shorter videos that'll, try probably be under that 20-minute mark. That's what we're kind of shooting for. We know how busy everyone is, and we still want to be able to focus on topics and have guests on. So that's going to kind of be our focus as we roll this out. Again, we encourage your feedback. Thank you to everyone that's been, sharing their insights, and it was really cool. Anthony and I have been on the road, been visiting some clients, and we get in there and they're pulling up our calculators and they're talking about the KPIs, and their team's excited because they've implemented KPIs and they're seeing how it's improving things. So thank you. We appreciate everyone, obviously, that's listening to us. And if you feel like you get value out of what we're doing, this episode, any of the episodes that we've already recorded, obviously, I encourage you to go and listen to those. But please make sure that you're following us, you're liking and subscribing to the show, whether it be on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or whatever streaming platform you prefer. Even share this episode with a contractor or someone else within your organization that you feel like they might need that edge as well. For more tools, resources, and support, visit yourcontractorsedge.com. We're constantly evolving that. I know that we've got some really great plans. Our marketing director is really focused on trying to take a lot of what's in Anthony and I's brains and kind of put it out there. So we're developing a playbook here in the future. By the time you listen to this, we'll already be at World of Concrete. So super excited about rolling that and kind of unveiling, this platform to the folks that are there. But, with that, we'll be back soon with more tips, tools, and tactics that'll help you grow your business. Thanks a lot.